It was supposed to be a night of celebration. 2 years of marriage, a milestone. But as I woke up that morning, excitement buzzed in my chest, the kind I always felt before big events, before moments that promised something unforgettable. Timothy and I were supposed to celebrate our second anniversary with close family and friends at Mason and Sharon's house. The plan was simple: dinner, laughter, memories made. At least, that was the plan in my head. What I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that this anniversary would mark the end of everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The truth was waiting, buried deep within the folds of a carefully arranged evening. And the truth would shatter everything. The morning had started like any other, a quiet breakfast shared between us, the usual comforting routine that had kept me grounded. Timothy was there, but he wasn't really present. His silence lingered between us like a heavy fog. He barely looked up from the newspaper when I handed him his breakfast, his usual response. A smile, a kiss, some sign that he cared, was missing. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just the pre-party nerves. But as I plated his pancakes, something didn't feel right. His absence wasn't just physical, it was emotional, a quiet space growing larger between us, one I couldn't fill. By the time I arrived at Mason and Sharon's, my anxiety had grown. The house was already set for the celebration. Sharon's demands were precise as always. Nothing less than perfection was acceptable for her. Every napkin folded just so, every flower in place, every glass polished to a gleaming shine. I worked quickly, setting the table, arranging the candles, but the excitement I usually felt in these moments was gone. Sharon hovered, her eyes too bright, her smile too wide, as if she were waiting for something, waiting for a moment to arrive. But she wasn't the only one. Mason, too, observed everything with the cool detachment he reserved for family matters, his quiet approval or disapproval clear in the way he shifted in his chair, the way his eyes darted around the room, assessing. The guests began to arrive, and the evening started to take shape, just as I'd planned. It should have been a perfect night, an evening filled with congratulations, with laughter, with warmth. But I noticed the subtle tension in the air. Small conversations would stop when I entered the room, and the air would feel too thick, too quiet. My Aunt Patricia pulled me aside during the cocktail hour, her face pinched with concern. "Catherine, are you okay? You look a little pale." I forced a smile, brushing it off as anniversary nerves, but her eyes never left me, studying me with a gaze that felt far too knowing. She wasn't the only one. The others, too, had that look, concern mixed with something I couldn't quite place. Timothy, meanwhile, seemed to drift further away from me. Every time I tried to engage him in conversation, his answers were short, his focus somewhere else. The moments when we would share a laugh or a touch, when we'd exchange quiet looks, were gone. He avoided my gaze, his body language closed off, distant. It felt like 1,000 small things building up to something I didn't understand. Was it just stress? Or was something else happening beneath the surface? Dinner began and the tension grew even more palpable. Mason took the floor, giving a speech that was all about family, about love, about connection, but his words felt hollow. It was as if he were speaking to an audience rather than his family, like this was a performance, a ritual. My hands trembled as I reached for my water glass, the quiet dread creeping up on me. And then, as dessert was being served, the moment I had been dreading arrived. Sharon, standing to announce something, her voice bubbling with excitement, her eyes fixed on me with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. "We have such a wonderful surprise for you, Catherine," she said, her words slicing through the room like a prelude to something horrible. My heart skipped a beat, and the air seemed to shift. My pulse quickened, but I couldn't understand why. Everything was supposed to be fine, but the sudden tension in the room made me question everything. Timothy, sitting beside me, didn't move, didn't even glance in my direction. He just stared at his plate, his face pale, his jaw clenched. The silence stretched, and I could feel the eyes of the room on me. Every guest, every family member was waiting for something, and I was suddenly very aware that I was no longer in control of the situation. The carefully planned evening, the smiles, the laughter, all felt like a facade. And then, it hit me. This wasn't an anniversary celebration. This was something else entirely. Something was about to happen, something I couldn't yet see, but I could feel it creeping up on me like a dark shadow. I sat frozen, my heart racing, as Mason stood and cleared his throat, the room falling into an uneasy silence. "We have gathered tonight not just to mark Catherine and Timothy's second anniversary," he began, his voice deep and deliberate, "but to address some very important family matters." My stomach lurched. Family matters. My mind raced, but I couldn't process the words. My body was already reacting, the sinking feeling in my chest growing with each passing second. This was not the celebration I had imagined. It was something darker, something I wasn't prepared for. And then it happened. Mason pulled an envelope from his jacket, holding it high for everyone to see. I didn't understand at first. The words petition for dissolution of marriage slowly began to form in my mind as he spoke, his voice cutting through the fog of confusion. "Catherine, my dear," he said, his words dripping with false warmth, "it has been 2 years. Adequate time to evaluate the success of this union. Tonight, we make necessary decisions for the good of all involved." I didn't know what to do. My hands were shaking as I took the envelope from him. Divorce papers. My heart sank and I looked to Timothy, searching for some sign that this was a mistake. But he didn't meet my eyes. His face was white and he didn't speak. My entire world seemed to crumble in that moment, everything I had known, everything I had worked for, slipping through my fingers like sand. The man I thought I knew, the man I had loved, had already made his decision. And just when I thought the night couldn't get worse, Sharon spoke again, a smile too wide on her face. "We'd like you to meet someone very special." A young woman stepped forward and my stomach twisted. Judith, Timothy's coworker, the one I had met at the grocery store, but this time she wasn't nervous. This time she was calm, poised, and she was wearing the earrings I had always admired. Timothy's grandmother's earrings, the ones that were supposed to be mine one day. The world around me seemed to spin as I finally understood. This wasn't just an anniversary dinner. It was the end. The end of my marriage, my family's approval, and the life I thought I had built. The air in the room was suffocating. Judith stood there, smiling in a way that seemed too rehearsed, too perfect. I stared at her, the woman who had been quietly inserted into my life without my knowledge. The realization hit me like a slap in the face. She was the one, the replacement, the one who had been chosen while I was still trying to build a life with Timothy. Mason's voice cut through my thoughts. "Judith has been with Timothy for some time now," he said, his tone dripping with satisfaction. "We just wanted to introduce her properly." I couldn't process the words. My body felt numb and the blood drained from my face. I glanced at Timothy again, hoping for some sign of remorse, but he wouldn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the table, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. His silence spoke louder than any words ever could. "This is a mistake," I finally managed to say, my voice shaky. "This isn't real. You're all playing some kind of sick joke on me." Mason's expression didn't change. "Catherine, please understand. This has been coming for a long time. It's for the best for everyone." I felt like the walls were closing in on me. The tension in the room was palpable, thick with unspoken judgments. Every single person around that table was complicit in this, complicit in the betrayal. It wasn't just Timothy. It wasn't just Mason or Sharon. They were all in on it. And I was the outsider, the fool who had been blind to everything. "Catherine," Sharon spoke now, her voice too sweet, too careful. "You know we only want what's best for Timothy. He deserves more, someone who can give him what he needs." I felt like I was drowning. My head was spinning as everything around me felt like it was slipping out of my control. I had given everything. I had worked so hard to fit into their family, to be the perfect wife. But none of it had mattered. All that mattered to them was that I hadn't been able to give Timothy what he wanted, a child. The pain was unbearable. The man I had loved, the man I had sacrificed so much for, was standing by while his family tore me apart. Then, the most cutting words came from Timothy's lips. "You don't have to make this harder than it is, Catherine. This is what's best for both of us." I felt my heart shatter. "What are you saying?" My voice cracked, but I couldn't stop the words. "You've been planning this all along, haven't you?" He didn't answer. He just stared ahead, his expression cold, almost indifferent. There were no apologies, no remorse in his eyes, just the hollow emptiness of a man who had already moved on. "Sign the papers," Mason's voice came again, and his eyes locked onto mine with an unnerving intensity. "It'll be over quickly. No more pain, no more waiting." I glanced at the divorce papers in my hands. The weight of them seemed to increase with every second that passed. They were real. This was really happening. My marriage, the life I had worked so hard to build, was being stripped away piece by piece, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. "Please," I whispered, "please tell me this is all a mistake." But no one answered, not even Timothy. Erica's voice, sharp and urgent, cut through the silence. "Don't sign anything, Catherine, not yet." I turned toward her, grateful for the lifeline she was offering, but my body was still frozen. I could hardly move. I felt numb. Erica's presence was the only thing keeping me anchored to reality. "Catherine, listen to me," Erica said, her eyes fierce with determination. "I've got something for you, something that changes everything." Mason's face twisted with irritation. "This is not the time for your games, Erica." But Erica wasn't backing down. She moved forward, her pace deliberate, and I felt a flicker of hope. She pulled something from her purse, a small envelope, thick with importance. "This," Erica said, her voice steady but full of power, "is going to change everything." I stared at the envelope in her hand. The weight of it felt like it carried a secret, one that could shift the balance of everything. I was barely breathing as she walked over to me, holding the envelope with careful hands. The moment stretched on forever as I stared at her, wondering what could possibly make this worse, what could be worse than the betrayal I was already facing. Erica didn't wait for anyone's permission. She handed me the envelope, and I hesitated for only a moment before I tore it open. My hands were shaking as I pulled out the contents, 2 sheets of paper. One was a medical document. I scanned it quickly, my heart racing as the words, "pregnancy test result," jumped off the page. I blinked stunned. The results were clear, positive I was pregnant. The room seemed to stop moving. The color drained from Mason's face, and Sharon's jaw tightened. But the real shock came when I turned to look at Timothy. His face went pale. His eyes widened in shock. You're pregnant." His voice was weak, barely above a whisper. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "Surprised?" I asked, my voice low, filled with a cold, biting anger that surged within me. "This is what you've been waiting for, isn't it? A reason to throw me away, to replace me with her." Timothy opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His eyes flicked between me and the papers in my hands, his expression a mixture of guilt and something else. Fear? Regret? I couldn't tell. Erica's voice cut through the tension again, stronger now. "Timothy, your family's plan isn't working. Catherine is pregnant with your child. Your grandchild, Mason, the one you thought she could never give you." The silence in the room was deafening. No one spoke. No one moved. Everyone was looking at me now, waiting for some kind of reaction. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I turned to Mason, my voice steady. "You wanted a grandchild, didn't you, Mason? Well, here's your heir, the one you thought I could never give you." Mason's face was unreadable, but the shock was clear in his eyes. "Catherine, this wasn't supposed to happen." "Well, it did," I said, my voice firm now. "And now it's your problem. You've made your decision, and I've made mine." The betrayal felt suffocating, but with the truth now out in the open, I felt the first hint of power returning. It wasn't over, not yet, and the night wasn't finished. There were still more revelations to come. The tension in the room was unbearable. I held the papers in my hands, the weight of them now far heavier than before. The room was silent, save for the faint sound of my pulse pounding in my ears. Every eye was on me, the weight of their stares pushing down on me like a physical presence. Mason stood frozen, his earlier confidence shattered, his lips slightly parted in disbelief. Sharon's face twisted into something almost like disgust, but there was fear too, fear that her perfect plan was slipping away. You're pregnant." Mason's voice was hoarse, as if the words had been forced from him. "Yes," I said, my voice cutting through the suffocating silence. "I am pregnant with Timothy's child, your grandchild." Judith's face turned a shade paler as the truth hit her, and I could see the unease settle on her. She had been a quiet part of this scheme, but now the reality of what was happening was clear. She wasn't going to get the fairy tale she thought she was walking into, not when everything was falling apart before her eyes. Mason glanced from me to Timothy, who had still not spoken, his face ashen. I could see the panic growing in his eyes. He wanted to say something, but the words were trapped, the weight of the moment too much for him. I didn't care, not anymore. I turned to face Timothy directly, my voice low and steady, despite the anger swirling in my chest. You thought I couldn't give you what you wanted. You thought this marriage was a failure. But now, look what you've done. You've planned your own replacement, and now everything's falling apart around you." Timothy shifted, his eyes flicking nervously toward the door as if he was looking for an escape. "Catherine, I never meant for this to happen," he stammered, his voice full of uncertainty. "Of course you didn't," I snapped. "You never meant for any of this. You just wanted an easy out, a way to replace me with someone who could give you what I couldn't." His face contorted with frustration, but still, no real apology came. The truth was clear now, and I saw it in his eyes, the realization that he had underestimated me. He thought I was broken. He thought I was just going to take it, walk away quietly, let him have what he wanted. But I wasn't going anywhere, not now. "Do you think I'll just sign these papers?" I asked, holding up the divorce documents. My voice was cutting, but it was calm, controlled. "Do you really think I'll walk away from this and let you and your new little family live happily ever after?" The room shifted again, and I could see the discomfort on everyone's face. They had expected me to crumble, to beg, to do anything to fix this broken marriage. But I wasn't the one who needed fixing. Mason's face twisted in frustration, his earlier air of authority evaporating. "Catherine, please, don't make this more difficult than it already is. It's for the best, for everyone." "For everyone?" I repeated, my voice rising now. "You've made your decision. You've chosen to throw me out to replace me with someone younger, someone more fertile, but that's not the worst of it. The worst part is that you all did this in front of everyone. You humiliated me in front of all these people. You think I'll just sign these papers and walk away quietly?" Sharon stood up suddenly, her face flushed with anger. "Catherine, you're being unreasonable. You're not thinking straight." I turned on her then, my eyes sharp. "Unreasonable? You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Watching me, criticizing me, waiting for me to fail. You're the one who's unreasonable." Timothy still didn't speak, still didn't defend me. He just stood there, eyes darting around, his silence speaking volumes. And I realized then that I didn't need him. Not anymore. "Enough," I said, my voice firm as I finally turned to leave. "I'm done. I don't need this. I don't need any of you." But as I walked toward the door, I was stopped by a voice, Erica's voice. Her words cut through the chaos, sharp and full of purpose. "Catherine, don't walk away just yet." I stopped, turning to face her. Her face was pale, but there was something in her eyes, determination, clarity. She had something. I knew it in my gut. She had a card to play, and I was ready for whatever it was. Erica stepped forward, holding something in her hands. Another envelope. This one was smaller, unmarked, no telling what it contained. But I could feel the weight of it, the significance. She walked right past Mason, who stood frozen, still trying to process the avalanche of information he had just been hit with. Erica didn't stop. She came directly to me and handed me the envelope. "Open it," she said, her voice steady, confident. "You need to see this." I took the envelope from her, the tension in the room thickening with every second. The silence stretched out, everyone watching, waiting for me to do something, to react. I didn't hesitate this time. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I read the first line and froze. My heart stopped. It was a medical report, one I had never seen before. A second test result, one that was sent to Erica, not me. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. "Erica, what is this?" My voice was barely a whisper, the weight of the paper in my hand too much to hold onto. She stepped closer, her eyes locked onto mine with unwavering certainty. "It's the proof, Catherine, the proof that you're not the only one who's been hiding something." I felt my pulse racing as the words sank in. The test result was clear. It was Timothy's, but not his alone. There was another name on the paper. Judith. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The words on the paper said it all. She was pregnant too. The world around me seemed to collapse in an instant. I looked from Erica to Timothy, to Mason and Sharon. No one said a word. It was like everything had just frozen. Judith was pregnant, and I was only now finding out. The shock and betrayal hit me like a wave, crashing over me. The room was spinning, but Erica stood firm, her eyes on me, unwavering. "This changes everything," she said softly. And I realized, for the first time in that room, I wasn't the only one with secrets. They had all been hiding something, and I was done being the victim. The room was silent, the weight of Erica's revelation pressing down on me. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the paper in my hand. Judith was pregnant, and it wasn't just some coincidence, it was deliberate, calculated. They had known, all of them. I looked at Timothy, but he couldn't meet my gaze. His eyes were locked on the ground, the shame too heavy for him to bear. He didn't say anything, didn't try to explain. And in that moment, I realized that he hadn't just been passive in this, he had been complicit. He had made his choice long ago. Mason stepped forward, his expression tight, the facade of control slipping. "What is this, Erica?" His voice was strained, the authority he usually carried no longer there. He wasn't in control anymore. Erica stood her ground. "This, Mason, is the truth. The same truth you've been hiding from Catherine. The truth that your precious son and his future bride have been planning behind her back. They've been playing her for a fool." Mason's face turned crimson. He opened his mouth to say something but stopped, realizing that no words would undo what had been exposed. "Judith," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "You thought you could step into my life and replace me, but you're just another part of their plan, aren't you? Another piece in this sick game." Judith flinched, her smile faltering. She took a step back, her eyes darting between Timothy and Mason, the guilt evident in her expression. I could see the cracks in her mask now. She wasn't the confident woman she appeared to be. She was just another pawn in their game, and she knew it. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she finally said, her voice weak, almost pleading. "Didn't mean for it?" I shot back, my voice cutting through the air. "You're pregnant, Judith, with his child, and you think you didn't mean for it to happen? What did you think I wouldn't find out?" Timothy's head snapped up at the mention of his child. "Catherine," he started, his voice desperate, but I held up a hand to stop him. "No, Timothy, don't even try to justify this. You were part of this all along." I turned back to Mason. "You knew, didn't you? You knew this was all going to happen, that I was going to be thrown aside when I couldn't give them what they wanted. That's why you pushed so hard. That's why Sharon kept making those comments about my failures." Mason took a step back, his face devoid of any emotion now. "It's for the family, Catherine, for the future." "No," I said, my voice low but filled with conviction. "It's not for the family. It's for you. You wanted control, you wanted power, and you wanted a perfect little legacy. But you didn't count on me fighting back. You didn't count on me standing up for myself." The truth was unraveling fast, each word I spoke cutting deeper into their carefully constructed lives. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat anymore. I wasn't going to play along with their manipulations. "Catherine," Sharon's voice finally broke through, cold and sharp. "You're making a scene. This isn't how it's supposed to go. We're just trying to do what's best for everyone." "What's best?" I laughed, but it was bitter. "What's best is letting you all get away with this. You want me to just sign these papers and walk away, don't you? Well, that's not going to happen." Sharon moved to intercept me, her movements calculated. "We're trying to save you from yourself. You're not capable of seeing what's best for you. You've let this marriage turn into something ugly. It's better for all of us if you let go." "Let go," I repeated. "Let go of a marriage that you've already decided is worthless. Let go of my dignity, my sense of self, just so you can walk away with your perfect little life." Erica stepped forward again, her voice steady but unwavering. "Catherine, you're not alone in this. They thought they could break you, but they didn't realize how strong you really are." I turned to Erica, feeling a surge of gratitude. She had been my rock in all of this. She had been the one person who hadn't given up on me, who hadn't seen me as just a pawn in this twisted game. But my gaze shifted back to the papers in my hand. The divorce papers, the symbol of everything they thought they could take from me. "Sign them, Catherine," Mason said, his voice cold now. "We'll all move on. This doesn't have to be ugly." I couldn't let them win. Not now, not after everything. They wanted me to be weak, to fold under the pressure, but that wasn't going to happen. They wanted me gone so they could build their perfect family, but they had underestimated me. I looked at the envelope again, the legal papers staring back at me, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of defiance. I wasn't going to let them dictate my future. I wasn't going to let their cruelty be the end of me. "No," I said quietly, but the words were firm. "I won't sign them." Mason blinked in disbelief, and for the first time I saw the cracks in his control. "You'll regret this," he warned, but his voice lacked the usual authority. It was desperate now. "You're already too late," I shot back. "You've already done your worst. You can't take any more from me." Timothy opened his mouth to speak again, but I wasn't listening anymore. This wasn't about him anymore. This wasn't about any of them. I turned and walked toward the door, but just before I reached the threshold, I paused. "I'm done. You'll never see me again," I said, my voice cold. "But you'll never forget me either." With that, I walked out of the house, leaving behind the broken pieces of a life I had once thought was mine. But as I stepped into the cool night air, something shifted inside me. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The battle wasn't over, but I had just taken the first step toward winning it. I hadn't expected to feel free. But as I walked out of Mason and Sharon's house, a strange calm washed over me. The chaos behind me was their mess now, not mine. I had drawn the line. I wasn't going to let them define my future, not anymore. Erica followed closely, her footsteps quick and determined. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly, though I knew she could see the resolve in my posture. "I will be," I said, my voice steady, though the weight of what had just transpired was still heavy in my chest. "But this isn't over, not by a long shot." Erica didn't argue. She knew this wasn't just about walking away from a marriage. It was about taking back control over my life, about taking away their ability to dictate my worth. We got into her car, and as we drove away, the house faded in the rearview mirror. But the thoughts didn't stop. I knew I had made the right decision, but there was still the aftermath to deal with. Mason, Sharon, Timothy, they weren't going to let me walk away without a fight. The next few days were a blur. The phone calls started almost immediately. First, it was Mason, then Sharon, and finally Timothy. They all tried the same tactic, guilt. They told me I was being unreasonable, that I was making a mistake, that this was just a phase. But each call only made me more certain. They wanted to rewrite the story, but I wasn't going to let them. Then came the message that shook me. It was an email from Timothy. The subject line was simple: "We need to talk." I stared at it for several minutes, feeling the weight of what had been said and what hadn't. We needed to talk. I had no interest in hearing more empty apologies. But something gnawed at me, something I couldn't ignore. Was he finally ready to face the truth? Or was this just another attempt to regain control? I opened the email. "Catherine, I know things between us are impossible right now, but I need you to understand. What happened at that dinner wasn't planned. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want the chance to explain. Please meet me. We need closure." Closure. I read the words again, each one more hollow than the last. Closure. A nice word to use when you've been caught in a lie, when everything is falling apart, and you need to wrap it up with a neat bow. I typed a response before I even realized it. "There's nothing to explain. It's over." I clicked send before I could change my mind. And for the first time in days, I felt the smallest bit of peace settle over me. But I knew better than to think that was the end of it. The next day, my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach drop. "Mason." I answered, bracing myself. "What is it, Mason?" I asked, my voice cool. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice clipped. "You need to come back. This doesn't have to end like this." "You're right," I replied, not wasting a second. "It doesn't have to end like this, but it will, Mason, because I'm done." There was a long pause on the other end. I could practically feel the wheels turning in his head as he tried to figure out his next move. He had never been the one to lose control, but now he was. "Catherine," he said after a beat, his tone softer now, but still tinged with authority. "I'm just trying to make you understand. This is bigger than you think. We have a family legacy to protect." "Stop," I interrupted. "This isn't about your legacy. This is about power, about control, and I'm not going to be your pawn anymore." Mason's voice dropped, turning colder. "You don't understand what you're walking away from. You've already signed the papers. Do you really think you can just walk away and pretend nothing happened?" I knew what he meant, the divorce papers. They were still in the air, hanging there, waiting to be filed. "You think those papers mean anything?" I shot back. "You think they can erase what you've done? They won't. You can't just rewrite history. "You've shown your true colors, Mason, and I'm done playing this game." The line went silent for a moment. I could hear him breathing on the other end, a low, controlled exhale, like he was trying to steady himself. "I'll make sure you regret this," he said finally, his voice cold, as if he had made up his mind to retaliate. I didn't flinch. "You can try, but you won't win." The call ended abruptly, and I sat back, letting the adrenaline settle. They thought they could break me, but they didn't realize that breaking me would only make me stronger. The following days were filled with unease. The calls stopped, but the threats didn't. They didn't need to say it anymore. Mason, Sharon, Timothy, they all made it clear in their silence that they weren't done with me. They would find another way to get what they wanted. But I had learned something in the past week. I had learned that I was stronger than they thought, and now I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my child. Erica and I continued our quiet, steady days. She helped me go through the motions, figuring out the next steps, finding the right lawyer, securing my future. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about taking back my life. And then the final blow came. It wasn't an email, it wasn't a call, it was a letter. A lawyer's letter. It was from Timothy's lawyer, stating that he was requesting full custody of the child. The audacity of it stunned me. They didn't just want me gone, they wanted everything. My marriage, my future, my child. And that was the moment I realized I hadn't even begun to fight. They were playing their final hand, but they had underestimated me. I wasn't going to let them take my child, not without a fight. The game was far from over. The letter from Timothy's lawyer was just the beginning. It felt like a slap in the face, an attempt to seize everything from me, my marriage, my life, my child. I couldn't believe it at first. Timothy, the man who had abandoned me emotionally and publicly humiliated me, now wanted to take my child away. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I wasn't going to sit back and let them strip me of everything. I called Erica immediately after reading the letter. She could tell by my voice that things had escalated. "We have to fight this," she said, her voice full of resolve. "They think they can take everything from you, but they're wrong." I knew she was right. I couldn't let them win. This wasn't just about getting out of a toxic marriage. This was about protecting my future, my child, and my dignity. I wasn't going to let them turn my life into some twisted game where they were always in control. We contacted a lawyer who specialized in custody battles. His name was Paul, and he was known for handling high-profile cases, the kind where power and money were used to manipulate the system. He listened carefully as I explained everything, from the divorce papers to the lies, the betrayal, the revelation that Timothy and Judith were planning a future together. Paul didn't need convincing. He knew this wasn't going to be easy, but he also knew the stakes were high. "The first thing we're going to do," Paul said, "is get your side of the story heard. We'll request a temporary custody hearing to ensure that no decisions are made before we get a chance to present your case." The legal system was a maze, and I knew it would take time, but I wasn't going to let them have the upper hand. Timothy and his family could use their wealth and influence, but I had something they didn't: the truth. For the next few days, Erica and I worked tirelessly. We gathered every piece of evidence we could: text messages, photos, anything that showed the betrayal and deceit I had endured. The more we uncovered, the clearer it became that Timothy had never been interested in protecting our family. His actions, his silence, everything pointed to one thing: he had already moved on. The hearing was set for a week later. During that time, Timothy and his family made several attempts to reach me. They offered me deals, trying to get me to sign an agreement that would essentially hand them full control of the situation. But I wasn't fooled. I knew their plan. They wanted me to back down, to accept their terms. But I wasn't backing down. The night before the hearing, I received another letter. This one was from Mason. It wasn't a legal document, but it carried a threat just the same. It was a simple note, written in a way that seemed almost casual, but the message was clear. "You can't win this, Catherine. We have too many resources. You're making a huge mistake. Think of your child, think of your future." It was a thinly veiled threat designed to shake me. But it didn't. I had already made my decision. They could try to intimidate me, but I wasn't scared anymore. The day of the hearing, I walked into the courtroom with Erica by my side. I had prepared myself for whatever might come, but nothing could have prepared me for the way things unfolded. Timothy was already there when I arrived. He sat with his lawyer, a grim expression on his face. He didn't look at me, he didn't even acknowledge my presence, and that, in itself, was a sign. The hearing began, and the tension in the room was thick. Timothy's lawyer tried to paint me as unstable, as someone who wasn't fit to raise a child. They brought up my inability to conceive, they mentioned the turmoil of our marriage, and they tried to paint me as the one who had caused all the problems. But Paul was prepared. He countered every claim, every accusation. He brought up the evidence we had gathered, the phone records, the emails, the moments when Timothy had blatantly lied to me. It was clear now, they had been plotting behind my back for months, maybe even longer. As the hearing progressed, I could see the cracks in their case. Timothy's lawyer was starting to falter. He had nothing concrete to back up his claims, and the more they spoke, the more their lies became exposed. Finally, it was my turn to speak. I took a deep breath and stood before the judge, my voice calm but firm. I spoke of the years I had spent in that marriage, of the love I had given, of the betrayal that had broken me, and of the child I now carried. I spoke of how I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for my future and for my baby's future. And when I finished, I saw the judge nodding, his eyes thoughtful. I couldn't read him, but I could tell he was taking everything in. The court session ended, and we were told the decision would come in a few days. The wait felt like torture. Every moment felt like an eternity as I replayed everything that had happened. But I didn't let myself break. I had come this far, I had made my stand. The next day, I received a call from Paul. I could tell by his voice that it was good news, but I wasn't ready to get my hopes up. "Catherine, the judge has made his ruling," Paul said. "It's a victory. You've won the temporary custody of your child. Timothy has no legal grounds to take you to court for full custody at this time." A wave of relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. This was just the beginning. I knew the fight wasn't over. Timothy and his family weren't going to give up easily. They had the money and the power to drag this out for as long as they wanted. But for now, I had won. And that small victory, for the first time, made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I had a chance. The relief didn't last. The moment I thought I could breathe, it was taken away. I had won temporary custody, but that didn't mean the fight was over. I knew they would come back, harder and more desperate, and they did just a few days later. The first call came early in the morning. It was Paul, his voice tense. "Catherine, I need you to be prepared for something. Mason's lawyer has filed an emergency petition for full custody. They're pushing hard now. We need to act quickly." My stomach sank. The words hit me like a hammer. I wasn't ready for this. I thought the temporary victory would give me some breathing room. But Mason and Sharon weren't backing down. They never had. I didn't hesitate. What do we do? "We need to move quickly. We can request a hearing, but they're going to do everything they can to turn this in their favor. They're going to paint you as unfit, as unstable. You need to be prepared for the worst." I hung up, my mind racing. I didn't have time to process. I had to act. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, legal documents, and hours spent strategizing. I was no longer just trying to survive, I was fighting for my child. And with every move I made, I felt the pressure building. I knew this wasn't going to end without a fight. Then came the bombshell. A letter arrived, hand-delivered from Timothy's lawyer. I tore it open, barely able to keep my hands steady. It was a motion to dismiss my temporary custody and request an expedited hearing for full custody. But that wasn't what made my heart stop. The motion included a statement from Timothy. A declaration. He was claiming that I was mentally unstable, that I had been erratic and unpredictable throughout our marriage, and that I was not fit to raise a child. I felt the blood drain from my face. He had turned the tables completely. He wasn't just fighting for custody, he was trying to destroy me, to paint me as a danger to my own child. I thought of all the times he had stood by silently while his family tore me apart. I thought of the way he had abandoned me when I needed him most. And now, he was trying to take everything from me. Everything. Erica was the first person I called. "He's going to use the mental health angle," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. "He's going to say I'm unfit." "Catherine, don't let them get to you," Erica replied. "This is exactly what they want, to see you crumble, but you're stronger than that. We'll fight this and we'll win." I knew she was right, but it didn't make the weight of the situation any easier to bear. They were coming at me from all sides now. The next week, we had a hearing. The courtroom was packed with lawyers, and the tension in the air was palpable. I sat with Paul, my hands clenched tightly in my lap, trying to steady my breathing. Timothy and his lawyer were sitting across from us, their smug expressions enough to make my blood boil. As the hearing began, I realized that this wasn't just a custody battle anymore. This was war, and they weren't fighting fair. Timothy's lawyer was smooth, calm, and ruthless. He painted me as unstable, highlighting every moment of weakness from our marriage, every disagreement, every argument. He didn't have to mention the affair. Judith's pregnancy was already a part of the narrative. He didn't even have to prove anything. His goal was simple: make me look like I wasn't capable of caring for my child. But Paul was ready. He fought back, pointing out inconsistencies in their claims, pointing out the fact that everything Timothy and his family had done was an attempt to manipulate the situation. He called their actions into question, how they had used their wealth and power to try and control the narrative. But it wasn't enough, not yet. The judge asked questions, and I did my best to answer, but the doubt in his eyes made my heart race. Was it enough? Was it enough to prove that I was the better parent, that I deserved to raise my child? Then came the most unexpected moment of the hearing. Erica stood up. "I have evidence that proves Catherine's stability," she said, her voice steady and unwavering. "I've been working with her, helping her through this process, and I can attest to her mental health. She's strong, she's resilient, she's the only one fighting for her family." She walked forward, holding up a document. It was a statement from a therapist who had been working with me. It wasn't a professional evaluation, but it was enough to cast doubt on the claims Timothy's lawyer had made. The judge took the document and read it quietly, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the room was silent, the tension unbearable. "I'll review this statement carefully," the judge said, setting the document down. "But I need more. I need to be sure that what's best for the child is what we're doing here." The room shifted. Timothy's lawyer's face tightened, and I could see the cracks forming in their carefully constructed case. They had expected me to fold. They had expected me to cave in, but they didn't know how far I was willing to go. The hearing ended without a decision. The judge said he would take everything into consideration and make his ruling soon, but I didn't feel hopeful. I felt the darkness creeping in again. I knew they wouldn't give up. I knew they would come at me harder, faster. They had the resources, they had the power. But I had something they didn't. I had the truth. And I wasn't going to let it go without a fight. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at myself. The woman who had been broken, discarded, rejected, she was gone, and in her place was someone stronger, someone who wasn't going to back down. I didn't need them. I didn't need anyone to validate me. But I would fight for my child, and I would win. The next few days were agonizing. The uncertainty hung over me like a storm cloud that refused to break. I waited for the judge's decision, knowing that whatever came next would shape my future. But I couldn't let myself wait in silence. I had to keep moving, keep fighting. Every phone call, every meeting, every piece of evidence, it all felt like pieces of a game I couldn't afford to lose. Then a breakthrough, a call from Paul. "Catherine, I think we have a chance," he said, his voice sharp with excitement. "There's something we didn't consider, something that could turn the entire case in your favor." My heart jumped. "What are you talking about?" "There's a loophole," he continued. "One of the pieces of evidence they've presented isn't what it seems. They've tried to make it sound like you're the one who initiated the breakdown of the marriage. But I've found something that changes that, something Timothy doesn't know we have." My mind raced. "What is it?" "A recording," Paul said. "From a conversation between Timothy and his lawyer discussing the custody battle. They mention you, what they think of you, what they plan to do. They never realized it was being recorded." I couldn't breathe. "You've got it. It's all here. It's enough to show that Timothy's been strategizing against you from the beginning. He's been planning this. And now, we've got proof." The excitement was like fire in my veins. This was the break I needed. I couldn't let this moment slip away. We arranged a meeting for the following morning. Paul wanted to go over the recording and strategize the next steps. I had no idea what it would mean for the case, but it felt like a shift. For the first time, I felt like I had control. The next day, Paul played the recording for me. I listened as Timothy's voice came through the speaker, calm but calculated. "She'll fight for custody, no doubt, but we need to make her look unstable. That's the key. Once we make her look crazy, the judge will side with us. She won't stand a chance." I felt the words like a punch. He had been planning this all along. Not only did he want to take my child, but he wanted to destroy me completely. The betrayal felt like a weight pressing on my chest, suffocating me. Paul paused the recording. "This is what we're going to use," he said. "This is the smoking gun, Timothy's own words. He's been planning everything from the start." I took a deep breath. We can't let them get away with this. We have to make sure they pay for everything they've done. Paul smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew the game was changing. "I'll file this with the court immediately. This changes everything." But before I could even process what that meant, I received a call. It was from Erica, and her voice was frantic. "Catherine, you need to hear this. I just got a call from someone. It's about the custody case. It's not over yet." "What are you talking about?" I asked, confused. "I'm telling you, they've got a plan B they're not giving up. They're pulling out all the stops." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" "They've been digging. They're trying to find something else they can use against you. They're going to go after your character, your past. You need to be ready. They've got something lined up." I stood frozen, trying to make sense of what she was saying. What else could they have? What more could they throw at me? "I'm telling you, they're not stopping," Erica continued. "They're going to pull something out of their hat, and they'll use it to make sure they win." I hung up the phone, my thoughts spinning. They were planning something I didn't know about, and I had to figure out what it was before it came crashing down on me. The days that followed were filled with even more tension. The court battle wasn't over. It was far from over. Timothy and his family weren't done yet, and I knew they would find a way to retaliate. Then a text came through. It was from an unknown number. "You think you've won, Catherine. You don't know what's coming next. Your world is about to fall apart." My heart stopped. The message was clear. They were coming for me. Again. I couldn't stay in the dark. I had to find out what they were planning. So I made a decision. It was time to confront Timothy. Time to finally get him to admit everything he had done. That night, I went to his apartment. I didn't knock. I didn't wait for an invitation. I let myself in. Timothy looked up in surprise, his face pale. "What are you doing here?" "I need answers," I said, my voice hard, unyielding. "You've been lying to me, to everyone. You've been planning this all along, haven't you? You and your family." He took a step back, his eyes filled with guilt. "Catherine, please, it's not what you think. I didn't want any of this, I didn't." "You didn't want it?" I interrupted. "You've been planning it from the start. You thought you could just walk away from me, from our life, and take my child with you. You thought you could replace me. Well, I'm not going anywhere, not without a fight." Timothy's face tightened, his hands clenched. "You don't understand. You never understood. You were always too emotional, too attached." I couldn't live like that anymore. I couldn't live in a marriage that wasn't real. I was shaking with fury now. "So you've been lying to me for months. You've been hiding things, making decisions behind my back, and now you want to act like it's all my fault." "I never wanted to hurt you," he said quietly, "but I couldn't keep pretending." I saw the truth in his eyes, but it didn't matter. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. "You'll never take my child from me," I said, my voice cold and final. "I'll make sure of it." I turned and walked out, knowing that the next step was going to be the hardest one yet. The legal fight was far from over, but I wasn't going to let them take what was mine. Not now, not ever. The days blurred together, each one a mix of strategy, meetings, and tense moments. The air felt thick with impending doom, the constant pressure from Mason and Sharon building like a storm. I could feel them circling, waiting for their moment to strike. I wasn't going to let them win, not this time. Paul was still working on the case, but I knew that Timothy and his family were going to try something else. Something desperate. They wouldn't go down without a fight, and neither would I. Then it happened. A late-night knock on my door sent my pulse racing. I didn't recognize the figure standing outside, but the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. He was someone important, someone connected. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice low. "I know what's been happening, I know what you're going through." I stepped back, motioning for him to come in. "Who are you?" "My name's Richard," he replied, closing the door behind him. "I'm someone who's been following this case closely, and I think you need to hear what I have to say." I didn't know if I could trust him, but at that point I had nothing to lose. "What's this about?" Richard didn't waste time. "Timothy's family isn't playing by the rules. They've got connections, and they've been using them to manipulate the system." I stood up straighter, my heart pounding. "What are you talking about?" "Your case, Catherine, it's bigger than you think. They've been using everything they've got, lawyers, money, power, to ensure that they come out on top. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is what they're planning next." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What are they planning?" "They've got dirt. They've been digging into your past, into your family's history. They're going to use anything they can to destroy your credibility. It's not just about custody anymore. It's about making sure you're out of the picture completely." I shook my head. "They've already tried everything. What else can they do?" "They've got a plan B," Richard said, his eyes cold. "And they're going to use it to bury you if you're not careful." I could feel the blood rush to my head. "What's the plan?" "They're going to accuse you of being unfit. Not just emotionally unstable, but physically unfit. They've got someone on the inside, someone who's been feeding them information about you. They're going to bring in a so-called expert who will testify that you can't provide a stable environment for your child." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "You're saying they've got someone who's going to lie, who's going to say I'm unfit?" Richard nodded. "They've been working on this for weeks. They'll stop at nothing to make sure you lose." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I knew they were ruthless, but this was a whole new level. They were willing to destroy me, to make sure I never got near my child again. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. "What do I do? How do I stop them?" Richard's expression was serious. "You need to move quickly. You need to expose their plan before they get the chance to pull it off. And you need to make sure they know you're not going to back down." "I'm not backing down," I said, my voice hard with determination. "What's the next step?" "You need to get ahead of them. Find out who's working with them. Find the insider. And you need to make sure the judge knows exactly what they're doing before they can pull it off." I nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes." Richard handed me a file. "This is everything you need to know. Names, connections, details. You can't let them get the upper hand. This is your last chance." I took the file from him, the weight of it almost too much to bear. It was the key to stopping them, but it also meant I was walking into even more danger. As Richard turned to leave, he paused. "One more thing," he said, looking back at me. "If you really want to win this, you need to be prepared to fight dirty. They will." I stared at him, trying to understand what he was saying. "What do you mean?" "They won't stop," Richard said, his voice low. "And if you don't get ahead of them, they'll destroy you. You'll be fighting for your life." I watched him leave, my mind reeling. Everything had changed. It wasn't just about custody anymore. This was war. They had already shown how far they were willing to go. And now, I had to show them I wasn't going to back down. I spent the next few days working nonstop. The file Richard had given me was a gold mine, names, dates, and connections that tied Timothy and his family to everything they had been doing behind the scenes. I couldn't believe the extent of their manipulation. But now, I had the power to turn it against them. I met with Paul again, laying out the evidence. "This is it," I said. "This is how we win." Paul looked through the file, nodding slowly. "You've got them now, but we have to move quickly. The longer we wait, the more time they have to act." We put together a plan. We were going to expose them. I wasn't going to let them use their power to control me any longer. I was going to take control of my life, my future, and my child's future. But just when I thought we were ready to make our move, another shock came. The day before our next hearing, I received a call from a familiar number. It was Timothy. "I don't want to do this anymore, Catherine," he said, his voice low. "I'm tired of fighting. Let's just end this." I felt a sickening laugh bubble in my throat. "End it? You've already tried to take everything from me. Now you want to act like it's over." "I never wanted this to happen," he said, But it's too late now, it's done. Something in his voice made me stop. What was he playing at? What was he really after? Before I could respond, the line went dead. I knew one thing for sure, this wasn't over. And I was about to make sure Timothy and his family regretted every move they had made. The next few hours were a blur. I couldn't shake the call from Timothy. His words lingered in my mind, his sudden surrender making no sense. I had no idea what game he was playing, but I knew it couldn't be good. There was no way he would just give up, not after everything. He had always been calculating, always one step ahead. This was just another trick. I had to find out what he was really up to. I couldn't afford to waste time. I called Paul and told him everything about the call. He listened quietly and then responded. This sounds like a tactic to lull you into a false sense of security. Don't buy it. We need to move faster, Catherine. I'm not backing down, I replied, determination in my voice. But I need to know what's really going on. If Timothy's up to something, I need to find out before it's too late. We'll dig into it, but you need to be prepared. This is only going to get messier. I felt the walls closing in again, but I knew I couldn't afford to show weakness. I had to stay strong, for myself, for my child. I spent the next few days following every lead I could find. I worked with Paul, gathering as much evidence as possible. Meanwhile, Erica kept an eye on Timothy's movements, trying to track down any inconsistencies in his behavior. It was a game of cat and mouse, and I wasn't going to let them win. But then, just as I thought I was getting ahead, something unexpected happened. I received another message, this time from an unknown number. It was simple. No greeting, just a chilling statement. Your child is in danger. You're not the only one fighting for them. My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the message, feeling the blood drain from my face. Who was this? Was it just another threat from Timothy and his family, or was someone else involved, someone I hadn't considered? I immediately called Erica, my voice shaking. I just got another message. Someone's threatening me, saying my child is in danger. Catherine, don't panic, Erica said quickly. We've been expecting something like this. They won't stop until they get what they want. We need to find out who's behind this. I couldn't let fear take over. I knew they were playing dirty, but I wasn't going to let them manipulate me. I had to think this through, take control of the situation. That night, I went over the message again, trying to piece together any clues. The person didn't identify themselves. They just mentioned my child, and that was enough to set off alarm bells. I had to be careful. Whoever was behind this knew how to get under my skin, how to make me feel helpless. But I wasn't going to give in. I wasn't going to let them win. I started to think about every angle. Could it be someone from Timothy's camp, or was it someone else entirely? I couldn't afford to overlook anyone. The next day, I met with Paul again. I showed him the message, and he immediately started going through possible leads. We'll track the number, he said, typing furiously into his laptop. If this is a real threat, we need to know who's behind it. I sat there waiting, the tension growing thicker by the second. Every moment felt like it could be the tipping point. I knew I couldn't let my guard down. Not now. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Paul looked up from his screen. His face was serious. It's not Timothy or his family. This message came from a burner phone. Someone's going to a lot of trouble to cover their tracks. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. Who would want to do this? Who else is involved? Paul shook his head. I don't know yet, but we'll keep digging. We'll find out who's behind this, and when we do, we'll expose them. But just as I thought we might be getting somewhere, the phone rang again. This time, it was a call from an unknown number, but the voice on the other end was unmistakable. Catherine, it's time to stop this, Mason's voice said, cold and unyielding. You're making a mistake. You've already lost. I gripped the phone tightly, my pulse pounding. What do you want, Mason? You're fighting a losing battle. You'll never win this. We have the power, the resources. You can't beat us, not now. Don't underestimate me, I said, my voice low and steady. I've already won more than you realize, and I'm not backing down. Mason chuckled, a sound devoid of any warmth. You don't understand, Catherine. You've already lost. It's just a matter of time before you realize that. I hung up without another word. I wasn't going to let him have the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. They wanted me to give up, to make a mistake, but I wasn't going to do that. I had come too far. Later that day, I received another unexpected visitor. It was Richard, the man who had given me the file with the evidence against Timothy's family. He looked serious as he entered my apartment, his eyes scanning the room like he was looking for something. "What's going on, Richard?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Why are you here?" "There's something you need to know," he said quietly, lowering his voice. "I've been doing some digging. The people you're up against, Mason, Sharon, and Timothy, they're connected to more than just the custody case. There's a lot more at stake here than just your child." My stomach churned. "What are you talking about?" Richard leaned in closer, his voice even lower now. "They're involved in something bigger, something criminal, and if you push them too far, they won't stop until they destroy you." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "What do you mean, criminal?" Richard looked over his shoulder, making sure no one was listening. "They've been using their wealth and influence to cover up a lot of things, and they're willing to do anything to keep their secrets hidden." I felt the room spin. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. I wasn't just fighting for my child anymore. I was fighting against a family with more power than I had ever imagined. Richard's next words hit me like a punch. "If you want to win this, you need to be prepared, because they won't stop until they bury you, and they have the means to do it." Everything I thought I knew about the fight ahead just changed. This was no longer just a custody battle. This was war. And I had to be ready to fight back harder than ever before. Richard's warning echoed in my mind. They weren't just trying to take my child. They were hiding something, and they were willing to destroy me to keep their secrets buried. I couldn't afford to let my guard down. The stakes were higher than I had realized. I wasn't just fighting for custody anymore, I was fighting for my life. Mason, Sharon, and Timothy weren't just enemies, they were part of a much bigger game, a game I hadn't even known I was part of, and they had no intention of letting me win. I immediately called Paul. "We need to move fast. I just got new information, and it changes everything. Mason, Timothy, and Sharon, they're connected to something bigger. Criminal activity. I don't know what, but they won't stop until they destroy me." Paul's voice was steady but filled with urgency. "We'll dig into this. We need to know what we're dealing with. But Catherine, you need to be careful. If they're involved in something like that, they'll do anything to protect themselves." I sat back, my thoughts racing. This was more than just a custody battle, it was a fight for survival. I had to outsmart them, expose them, before they had a chance to finish what they'd started. They wouldn't play by the rules, and neither would I. I spent the rest of the day digging through every document, every lead I could find. I reviewed every detail from the evidence Richard had provided, trying to connect the dots. What were they hiding? What had they done to get so much power? The more I thought about it, the more everything started to add up. The manipulation, the lies, it wasn't just about money or influence. There was something darker at play. They weren't just controlling a family legacy, they were covering their tracks. And I was the loose end that needed to be tied up. The breakthrough came when I found a name. It wasn't a name I recognized, but it was buried deep within the records. A business partner of Mason's. Someone who had been involved in some questionable deals over the years. I dug further, tracing their connections, until I uncovered a series of offshore accounts, money laundering schemes, and a network of shady businesses linked to Mason's family. The pieces clicked together. The power they had wasn't just from their wealth, it was from the illegal activities they had been hiding for years, and they had been using their influence to cover it all up. I knew what I had to do. I contacted Richard again. "I need everything you have on Mason, Sharon, and Timothy. I need to know who they've been working with, what they've been hiding. We need to expose this before they can use their power against me." Richard's voice was grim. "I'll get you what I can, but be careful. You don't know how far they'll go to keep their secrets. They're dangerous." "I'm not backing down," I replied, my voice sharp. "I'm not afraid of them." I didn't have time to wait for Richard's next move. I knew I had to act fast. The hearing was coming up, and I needed to be ready. I couldn't let them manipulate the system again. I had to expose them for what they really were, criminals. That night, I met with Paul to review the evidence we had. We had uncovered enough to tie Mason and his family to a series of illegal activities, but we needed more. We needed proof that they had been using their power to manipulate the legal system, to control people like me. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Paul said. "We have to make sure the judge sees this for what it is. We need to show him that this isn't just a custody battle. This is about something much bigger." I nodded, my mind focused. "I know what we need to do. We need to take them down, all of them." The plan was set in motion. The next day, we filed a motion to expose Mason's family's criminal connections. We submitted the evidence, showing how they had used their wealth and influence to manipulate the system, to control people like me, and to hide their illegal activities. The response came quickly. Mason's lawyer filed a countermotion, claiming that the evidence was irrelevant, that it was a personal attack designed to discredit their family. They tried to dismiss the evidence, but I wasn't going to let them get away with it. The day before the hearing, I received a final warning. A message, once again from an unknown number. "You're playing with fire, Catherine. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Walk away and we'll let you keep your child. Keep fighting and you'll regret it." I felt a chill run down my spine. They were trying to intimidate me, to make me back down. But I wasn't going to let fear stop me. I had come too far to turn back now. I called Paul, my voice tight with determination. "They're threatening me. They're trying to scare me into giving up. But I won't back down." "We won't let them intimidate you," Paul said. "We have the evidence. We're going to win this." The morning of the hearing arrived, and I could feel the tension in the air. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let them win. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Mason, Sharon, and Timothy sat on one side, their faces cold and unreadable. On the other side, Paul and I sat together, the weight of everything on my shoulders. I could feel their eyes on me, their judgment, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't. The hearing began, and Mason's lawyer immediately tried to dismiss the evidence we had submitted. But this time, Paul was ready. He countered with the criminal connections we had uncovered, exposing the dark truth about Mason's family. The room was silent as the judge reviewed the evidence. I held my breath, waiting for his decision. And then the judge spoke. "I find the evidence presented today to be concerning," he said, his voice firm. "The actions of the parties involved are troubling. I will consider all the information before making a final ruling, but I will not allow any party to manipulate this process for personal gain." I could feel the victory within my reach. The judge wasn't buying their lies. He was seeing them for what they truly were: manipulators, criminals, and liars, and I was finally being heard. But as the judge adjourned the session, Mason's lawyer shot me a look that made my blood run cold. This battle wasn't over. The war had only just begun. The judge had adjourned the session, but the weight of his words didn't feel like a victory yet. The battle was far from over, and I knew it. Mason, Sharon, and Timothy wouldn't take this lying down. Their power, their influence, everything they'd built was slipping through their fingers, and I had exposed a small crack in their empire. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt the pressure mount. I hadn't been prepared for what was coming next, but it was clear now that this wasn't just a fight for custody. It was war. And the worst part, they were going to play dirty. My phone buzzed as I stepped out into the hallway. Another message from the unknown number. "You think you've won, Catherine? You've only just begun to feel the consequences. You're playing a dangerous game." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Whoever was sending these messages wasn't going to stop, and I knew that whatever they had planned next would be far worse than anything I had faced so far. I called Paul immediately. "They're not going to give up. I just got another threat." "I'm not surprised," Paul replied, his voice calm but with an edge of concern. "They've got too much to lose, but Catherine, we've got them cornered now. They won't risk anything too obvious, not when we're this close. We have to stay one step ahead." "We can't afford to get complacent," I said, my voice sharp. "They'll do anything to stop us. We have to expose them before they make their move." Paul's voice grew quieter. "We need to find out who's behind these threats. Someone's feeding them information. Someone on the inside." I hung up, feeling the weight of everything pressing in on me. The next steps were crucial. I had to be careful. One misstep, and everything I had worked for could unravel. The following days were filled with tension. I kept my head low, stayed out of sight, and tried to stay ahead of every move Mason's family might make. But no matter how cautious I was, they were always just one step behind. Then came the bombshell. I was at home, reviewing some documents when I received a call from Erica. Her voice was tense, urgent. "Catherine, you need to see this. Now." "What is it?" I asked, already sensing something was wrong. "It's about Timothy. I think you need to know who he's been talking to, and it's not who you think." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "Just come to my place," Erica said, cutting the conversation short. "You need to see this for yourself." I rushed over, my mind racing. What had Erica found? What new piece of the puzzle was about to come crashing down on me? When I arrived, Erica was already waiting, a grim expression on her face. She handed me a file, thick with pages of information. "I've been looking into Timothy's connections. There's something you need to know." I flipped through the file, my eyes scanning the pages quickly. What I found made my blood run cold. Timothy had been in contact with someone I never expected, someone high up in the legal system, a judge. A judge who had connections to Mason's business dealings. A judge who had been handling cases in their favor for years. It was all starting to make sense now. The connections, the power, the manipulation. They weren't just using their wealth, they were using the system itself to control the outcome of every battle they fought. And now, they had someone on the inside. "I knew something was off," Erica said, her voice low. "But this is bigger than we thought." I closed the file, my hands trembling. "We need to expose this. We need to take this to the media." "No," Erica said quickly, her voice urgent. "We can't. If we do, it'll be over before we even start. They'll bury us. We need to be strategic. We need to take this to the right people quietly." I nodded, swallowing hard. "Who do we trust?" "There's a reporter I've been in contact with. Someone who's been digging into the corruption in the system. We can't do this alone. But we need to move fast. If Mason's family finds out what we know, it's over." The urgency in Erica's voice sent a chill through me. This was it. The final move. The game was changing, and I was about to go up against an entire system built on lies and corruption. But I had no choice. I had to expose them. We set the plan in motion. Erica contacted the reporter, and we started preparing the information we had gathered. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every step I took felt like it was leading me closer to a trap. The next morning, I received another message. It was the same unknown number. "You're digging too deep. You've crossed the line, and you'll pay the price." I knew they were getting desperate, but I didn't care. I couldn't stop now. I called Paul, my voice tight with determination. "It's time. We're going public." He hesitated for a moment before responding. "Are you sure? This could get ugly." "I'm sure," I replied. "It's time to take them down." The reporter we were working with got the story. The corruption, the illegal dealings, the manipulation of the legal system, it was all coming out. We had the evidence, the names, the connections. But as the story started to unfold, I realized the danger I was in. They wouldn't stop. They wouldn't go down without a fight. That night I received one final message. The text was short, but it carried a weight I couldn't ignore. "This ends now." I felt a knot form in my stomach. I didn't know what they had planned, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy. The fight had just escalated to a new level. And now I had to decide. How far was I willing to go to take them down? How much was I willing to sacrifice? The final showdown was coming, and I wasn't about to back down. The message lingered in my mind. This ends now. I couldn't shake it off. Whoever was behind those threats was preparing for something major. I could feel it closing in, like a storm waiting to strike. I knew I had to act. There was no more time for hesitation. The truth was out, and they were scrambling. They wouldn't let the story go public without trying to bury me, and if I wasn't careful, I'd be the one left in the dust. I met with Paul, Erica, and the reporter at the last possible moment. We had to get everything in place. I couldn't afford a mistake. The clock was ticking. Every move we made could be our last. "I don't need to tell you how dangerous this is," Paul said, his face tense. "They're going to retaliate, and when they do, we need to be ready." "We'll be ready," I said, though a cold chill ran down my spine. They've tried everything else. Now they're playing for keeps. Erica nodded. "We've got the facts, we've got the evidence, but we need to strike first. We can't give them a chance to stop us." The plan was simple. Expose the corruption in the legal system, connect the dots between Mason's family and their criminal activities, and make sure the public knew everything. But that meant going head-to-head with powerful people who would stop at nothing to make sure their empire stayed intact. The reporter worked quickly, his contacts in the media pushing the story into the public eye. We had already sent the information to a few trusted outlets, and soon enough, whispers turned into articles. Articles turned into reports. It was no longer just a scandal, it was a full-blown investigation. But it didn't take long for Mason's family to react. That night, the first blow came. I was at home, pacing the living room when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Catherine," came the cold, familiar voice. "You've made a mistake. You think you can take down everything we've built. You have no idea what you're dealing with." It was Mason. "You've lost, Mason," I said, my voice steady. "This is over. Your secrets are out. The public knows what you've been hiding. And now, there's no going back." His laugh on the other end of the line was menacing. "You don't understand, Catherine. It's not just your child anymore. It's everything. And if you think this is going to end with you walking away, you're wrong. We'll make sure you regret this." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. The game had just shifted. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't about custody. They were going to fight with everything they had. They wouldn't stop until they took me down. Minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from the unknown number. "You don't know who you're up against. They won't stop until you're destroyed." I didn't flinch. They were desperate now. They were trying to break me, but I wasn't backing down. Not now, not after everything I had fought for. The next day, the story hit full force. The media was all over it. The evidence was undeniable. The connections between Mason's family, the illegal dealings, and the corruption in the legal system were now front-page news. The public knew the truth. But that didn't stop them from trying to shut it down. The retaliation came in the form of a legal document, a cease and desist letter. Timothy's lawyer claimed that I had violated a non-disclosure agreement, that the information I had shared was false, and that I was making defamatory claims about their family. It was a blatant attempt to silence me. I couldn't believe it. They were trying to make me the villain. They were turning the tables, accusing me of being the one who was breaking the law. I called Paul immediately. "They're coming after me. They're accusing me of lying, of spreading false information. They're trying to make me look like the bad guy." "We knew this was coming," Paul said, his voice sharp with urgency. "They're trying to scare you, but they can't stop what's already out there. They can't stop the truth." "They're going to try," I said, my voice tight, "and they won't stop until they've ruined me." "We'll fight this," Paul replied. "We've got the truth on our side. We just need to stay focused." I felt a knot form in my stomach. They were pushing me into a corner, trying to force me into submission. They wanted me to back down, to give up, to admit defeat. But I couldn't, not now, not after everything I had uncovered. The following days were a blur of legal meetings, court filings, and media attention. I knew I couldn't trust anyone. Everyone around me could be a potential threat. Mason's family had their hands in everything, and they weren't afraid to use their power to get what they wanted. Then came the next blow. I was leaving my apartment late one night when I noticed a car parked across the street. I didn't recognize it, but there was something about it that made me uneasy. I tried to shake the feeling off, but it wouldn't go away. I couldn't help but wonder if I was being watched. I crossed the street quickly, but the car followed me. It was subtle at first, a car trailing behind me at a distance. Then it started to speed up, cutting off the road I was taking, blocking my path. I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart racing. Something wasn't right. Before I could react, the car pulled up next to me. The window rolled down slowly. A figure in the passenger seat looked out at me, their face hidden in shadow. "You're making a mistake," the voice said, low and cold. "You don't know how far this can go." The car sped away before I could respond, disappearing into the night. I stood there for a moment, my mind reeling. That wasn't just a threat, it was a warning. They were closing in, trying to intimidate me, but I wasn't going to let them win. The final confrontation was coming, and I wasn't going to back down. The warning from the car was the final push. The sense of danger escalated. I couldn't ignore it anymore. They weren't just playing dirty, They were getting desperate. And I was about to be caught in the crossfire of a battle much bigger than I had anticipated. I couldn't stay in the dark. I needed to find out what Mason's family was really planning. I couldn't afford to be reactive anymore. I had to take control. If they wanted to make it personal, so be it. The next morning, I met with Paul and Erica. The tension in the room was palpable. We knew what had to be done, but no one spoke it outright. The walls were closing in. "We need to go on the offensive," Paul said, his voice calm but carrying an edge. "We can't let them keep pushing us around. The public knows what they've done. We need to make sure we take this further." "We expose everything," I said, the words hard but sure. "Everything they've hidden, their connections, their illegal dealings, no more holding back." Erica leaned forward, eyes sharp. "But we need to make sure we do it right. If we go too far too fast, they'll bury us. We need the right evidence, and we need to make it airtight." I nodded. "I don't care what they do. I'm done playing by their rules. We need to hit them where it hurts. Everything's on the line now." We spent the next few days gathering what we could. Paul worked his contacts, trying to uncover more about the shady deals Mason and his family had been involved in. Erica helped me dig into Timothy's history, pulling every thread she could find. The more we uncovered, the clearer it became. They had built a house of lies, and it was about to collapse. Then, just as we thought we were on the verge of something big, it came. A call. A voice I didn't recognize. "You've made a mistake, Catherine," the voice said, its tone cold, calculated. "You've taken this too far." My heart dropped. "Who is this?" I demanded. "They won't tell you what they're really doing, but you've gotten too close. Too many people are watching. You need to stop." "Stop, you think I'm afraid of you?" I shot back. "I'm not going anywhere." The voice chuckled darkly. "You don't know who you're dealing with. It's not just about you anymore. It's bigger than you think. Walk away or you'll regret it." The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand, my mind racing. They were getting closer. I wasn't just a target anymore, I was a threat. I called Paul, my voice urgent. "We need to move faster. They're closing in. This isn't just about custody. They're hiding something much bigger." "We're onto it," Paul said. "But Catherine, you have to be careful. They're pulling out all the stops now. We don't know how far they'll go." "I don't care anymore," I replied, my voice steely. "They want to destroy me? Fine, but they're not taking me down without a fight." I hung up and immediately contacted the reporter who had been working with us. "We need to go public. The sooner, the better. Everything, timing is critical." The reporter responded with urgency. "I agree, but we have to be sure. This isn't just a story anymore. We're diving into dangerous waters." "We have everything we need," I said, my resolve clear. "I'm not waiting any longer." As we prepared to release the information, another shockwave hit. A news story broke, one I hadn't expected. Mason's company, the one I had been digging into, was under investigation. The headlines screamed about money laundering, illegal investments, and connections to politicians who had helped cover it all up. It was all starting to unravel. I felt a rush of satisfaction, but it was short-lived. I knew it wouldn't be long before they struck back. By the time I met with Paul and Erica the next day, I knew we couldn't rely on anyone else. This was on us now. "We've exposed enough," Paul said, his face grim. "But Mason's family isn't going to give up. They've got more power than we realize. They'll try to turn this around, spin it, and make you look like the villain." "I'm not the villain," I said, the words burning in my throat. "They are. They've been manipulating everyone. They think they can control this, but they're wrong." "We need to protect ourselves," Erica added, her expression hard. "We have the truth, but truth doesn't always win. We have to make sure we're prepared for what comes next." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message, from the same unknown number. "You think you're in control? You're not. We know what you've been doing. You won't be able to hide behind the truth for long. The consequences will be severe." My heart raced as I read the message, knowing the danger was escalating. They were close, too close. "They're not backing off," I said, voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. "They're getting desperate, but we can't stop now." That night I received a call I had been dreading. It was from the reporter. "Catherine, I've got some bad news," he said, his voice tense. "We've been able to get the story out, but now there's a hit on your name. Someone's trying to discredit you. There's a smear campaign starting." I didn't hesitate. I knew this was coming. What do we do? We fight back. We keep moving forward. The truth is on your side, but you need to act fast. They're going to come after you hard. I felt the walls closing in. Every move I made, every step I took was being watched. The enemy was closing in, and I had no choice but to face it head-on. The game was changing, and it was all or nothing now. I had come this far, and I wasn't going to back down. The final showdown was coming, and I would fight with everything I had. The hours after the phone call felt like the world was moving in slow motion. I couldn't shake the weight of the message. The consequences will be severe. They were getting to me, but this wasn't the time to show weakness. I had come too far to let them manipulate me now. I had to act fast. I went straight to Paul, my thoughts racing. They're coming for me. They won't stop until they ruin everything. We need to get ahead of them. Paul looked over the latest batch of documents we had compiled. They're pushing hard now. We need to hit them where it hurts, but we have to be careful. Every move we make will be under scrutiny. We can't afford to slip up. We won't, I said, my voice unwavering. We have the truth, and now we need to expose it. I'll make sure they pay for what they've done. The plan was set. We'd go public with everything we had. The criminal connections, the money laundering, the manipulation of the legal system, it all had to come to light. But I knew it wouldn't be as simple as just releasing the story. They'd have their own people working to suppress it. They would try to destroy me, just like they had tried with every other person who had dared to cross them. The day of the release, everything moved at breakneck speed. Paul had been in contact with the media outlets, setting up everything we needed for the story to break. The reporter had already lined up an exclusive feature with a major news organization, and once it was out, there would be no turning back. Erica had helped me gather the final pieces of evidence, things that I hadn't even known about until she dug deeper. I felt the weight of everything. I wasn't just exposing their corruption, I was exposing myself too. There would be no going back. The story went live in the late afternoon. At first, the response was everything we'd hoped for. Headlines spread quickly, and the truth started to filter into every corner of the news. Mason and his family were being exposed for what they really were. The criminal activities, the deals with shady figures, they were all there, in black and white. I watched the coverage with a mixture of satisfaction and dread. The truth was out, but I knew the storm was just beginning. I waited for the backlash, the retaliation that would inevitably come. And it came faster than I expected. That evening, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't an unknown number. It was Mason. "You think you've won, don't you?" His voice was laced with venom. "You've made a huge mistake. You've crossed a line that you can't come back from." "I'm not the one who crossed the line, Mason," I replied, my voice icy. "You've been hiding the truth for years, and now it's out. People know what you've been doing." "You think the public cares?" Mason spat back. "They'll forget about this in a week. We'll bury this like we've buried everything else. You think you've done something bold? You've just signed your own death sentence." I felt my pulse quicken. His threats didn't scare me, but the realization hit. They had resources. If they were serious, they could make this go away. "I've exposed you for who you are, Mason," I said, my voice steady despite the fear creeping in. "You can't cover this up anymore. It's over." The line went dead. I sat there, my heart pounding. They weren't going to back down. They were going to try everything to destroy me, to discredit me. They were going to fight back with everything they had. The next morning, the story took a different turn. New headlines appeared. This time, they weren't about the criminal connections or the illegal dealings. They were about me. They twisted the narrative, painting me as the instigator, the one who had orchestrated everything. They called me a liar, someone with a vendetta. They brought up my past, dug into every mistake I had ever made, and used it to discredit the truth I had revealed. They were turning the public against me, and it was working. I couldn't let them have the upper hand. The only way out was to expose them further, to show that everything they were doing was part of a larger conspiracy. If I let this slip now, I'd lose everything. I called Paul immediately. "They're turning the story around, they're attacking me, what do we do?" "We knew this was coming," Paul said, his voice grim. "We have to stay focused. We have more to expose. The question is, how far are you willing to go?" "How far?" I repeated, feeling the anger rise in my chest. I've already risked everything. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure they pay for what they've done. Paul paused. There's one more piece of the puzzle, something they didn't expect. We need to use it, but it's going to be risky. I listened closely. What is it? The judge, the one who's been protecting them. If we can get the truth about his involvement, if we can show that he's been complicit in everything, they won't be able to deny it. My heart skipped a beat. You're saying we have evidence on him? We have enough. We need to push it into the open, but we have to be careful. If we go after him directly, they'll find a way to bury it. We need to make sure we have every angle covered. I was on edge. This was it, the final move. It wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about the custody battle. If we exposed the judge, we'd expose everything. And that meant everything was on the line. I didn't hesitate. Do it. We expose him, all of it. The next few hours felt like the calm before the storm. Everything we had worked for, everything I had risked, was about to come to a head. By the time the final piece of the puzzle fell into place, I knew there was no turning back. The battle had reached its peak. It was do or die. The moment we released the final piece of the puzzle, the floodgates opened. I thought the truth would be my shield, my weapon, but instead, it became the focal point of an even darker game. The backlash was swift and brutal. The media that had once carried our story now turned it into something else, twisting every word, every fact to discredit me. The judge's connection to Mason's family, the illegal dealings, the money laundering, it was all there, but now it was part of a smear campaign. They painted me as a manipulator, someone desperate for attention, willing to destroy others for personal gain. I could feel the walls closing in. I was fighting a war on all fronts. The media was no longer on my side. Mason's family had too many strings to pull, too many people to manipulate. Then it came. A knock at the door. My heart skipped as I opened it, only to find two men in suits standing outside. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't need to. Their faces were cold, their demeanor calculating. "Are you Catherine?" one of them asked. His voice was sharp, a hint of authority that made my stomach tighten. "I am," I replied, already bracing for what came next. "You're being served," the other man said, handing me a thick envelope. "A court order for defamation. You're being sued." I opened the envelope without hesitation. There it was, Mason's family, using the full weight of their wealth to attack me, accusing me of ruining their reputation. They were claiming that everything I had exposed was a lie, and that I was the one who had caused irreparable damage. "Defamation," I muttered under my breath. "You can't be serious." The men didn't respond. They just turned and walked away, leaving me standing there in shock. They weren't going to stop. This was the final move. If I didn't play it right, they could take everything from me. My reputation, my future, everything. I didn't waste time. I immediately called Paul. "They're suing me for everything. They're trying to erase the truth, and I need to stop them." "We knew they'd retaliate," Paul replied. "But this is bigger than just a lawsuit. They're trying to crush you. We have to fight back harder than ever. I'll get us ready for the next move." I hung up, my mind spinning. I couldn't let them take this from me. I had already exposed them, and now they wanted to bury me under a pile of lies. The next morning, the game shifted again. A new message arrived, this time, not from the unknown number, but from someone I recognized. It was a simple line of text. "If you don't back down, things will get worse. There's still time to stop." It was a threat, a warning, but I wasn't backing down. They could keep coming at me, but I wasn't going to stop until the truth was out. I called Erica. "They're escalating. The lawsuit is just the beginning. They're trying to force me into submission. I need to expose them even more." "We've got the evidence, Catherine," Erica said, her voice low. "But we can't do this alone. We need someone inside their camp, someone who can give us the final pieces of the puzzle, someone who can give us leverage." I knew what she was suggesting. "You're talking about someone close to them, someone who can take them down from the inside." She didn't respond, but I knew what she meant. We needed to turn the tables. If we wanted to win this, we had to get their secrets. And we had to do it before they made their next move. "I'll find a way," I said, determination setting in. "They won't get away with this." As I hung up, a chill ran down my spine. Every time I thought I was one step ahead, Mason's family pulled me back into the fight. but I wasn't just fighting for custody anymore. This was about exposing them for who they really were, no matter the cost. Days passed and the pressure mounted. The lawsuit loomed over me, threatening to tear everything I had fought for to shreds. The media painted me as the villain, twisted the facts to fit their narrative. No one believed I was the victim anymore. I needed help, someone I could trust, someone who could dig deeper, get to the heart of the corruption. That's when Richard came through. He called me late one night. "I've got something for you," he said, his voice calm but with an edge of urgency. "I've been digging into their financials, and I've found something big." I didn't hesitate. "What is it?" "There's a hidden account. A fund that's been funneled through several shell companies. It's tied to Mason's family, and it's linked to illegal activities, bribery, money laundering. It's the proof we need to take them down." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "How soon can we use it?" "I'll send it over. We can't waste time. This is the final piece of the puzzle. If we release this, everything changes." I knew what we had to do. This was it. The information Richard had uncovered was the leverage we needed to turn the tables once and for all. But just as I was about to prepare for the final push, the phone rang again. A message from an unknown number. "You're playing with fire. You don't know what you're up against. If you continue, you'll regret it. This is your last chance to stop." I wasn't going to back down. Not now, not after everything I'd been through. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and prepared myself for the final move. They were coming for me, but I wasn't going to let them win. The truth would come out, one way or another. And this time, it was my turn to strike. The moment I received the last message, something inside me snapped. I had been pushed to the edge for far too long. Mason's family had underestimated me. They thought they could intimidate me into silence, thought they could break me with threats and lies. But they were wrong. I immediately called Richard. "Send me everything you've got," I said, voice tight with urgency. "It's time." "I'll send it over, but you need to be careful," he warned. "Once this is out, there's no going back." "I'm not backing down," I replied, already gathering my things. "They've taken everything from me. Now I'm taking it all back." The weight of the final piece of the puzzle settled on me. The information Richard had uncovered about Mason's hidden accounts, the illicit deals, the money laundering, it was a game changer. We had the proof, the leverage, and it was time to bring everything into the light. I sat down, went through the files Richard had sent, and my pulse quickened with each new detail. This was it. The smoking gun, the final blow. I called Paul. "Get ready, we're going live. This is the last move." "Are you sure?" Paul asked. "Once we release this, there's no turning back. We expose them completely." I took a deep breath. I've already lost everything. They think they can control me, but I'm done. This ends now. We moved quickly. I arranged for a press conference, one that would give us the platform to expose the truth once and for all. Paul worked with the reporter to ensure the release of the documents while I prepared for the fallout. I knew what was coming. They would come after me no matter what. The day of the press conference, the tension in the room was almost unbearable. I could feel the weight of what I was about to do, but I didn't hesitate. The media was waiting, the cameras were rolling. This was my moment. I took the podium, the documents in my hands. "Today, I'm here to expose the truth," I began, my voice steady, though the storm inside me raged. For too long, Mason's family has hidden behind their wealth and influence. They've used their power to manipulate the legal system, to control everyone around them, and to cover up their criminal activities. Today, that changes. I unfolded the documents, one by one, revealing everything. The hidden accounts, the illegal deals, the connections to politicians and judges who had helped them cover their tracks. As I spoke, I saw the shock in the faces of the reporters, the realization dawning on them. The story was no longer about custody. It was about exposing the entire web of corruption Mason's family had built. I kept going, detailing every piece of the puzzle, naming names, and connecting the dots. I could feel the weight of the truth bearing down on me. This was no longer just my fight. It was about everyone who had been affected by their manipulation, their lies. The room was silent when I finished. The reporters were scrambling to ask questions, their cameras flashing. The story was out, and there was no taking it back. I had done it. But as the questions started pouring in, I felt it. The shift, the change in the air, something was off. I looked up and saw a familiar face in the back of the room. A figure I hadn't expected to see today. Timothy. His face was pale, his eyes cold. He was standing there, watching me, the same man who had once promised me forever, the same man who had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I felt my stomach tighten as his eyes met mine. I had expected his family to be furious, but seeing him there, he wasn't just angry. He looked like he was about to implode. The reporters turned toward him, sensing the tension. One of them shouted, "Mr. Timothy, do you have a response to the accusations?" He didn't move, didn't speak. The silence in the room stretched on, thick with expectation. Then, slowly, he stepped forward. "I didn't expect this from you, Catherine," he said, his voice low and full of bitterness. "You've taken everything from me, you've ruined my life, but you're not going to win, you'll never win." The words cut through me, but I didn't flinch. "You don't get to say that," I said, my voice steady. "You had a chance to be part of the truth. Instead, you sided with your family with the lies, and now you're the one who's lost." Timothy's eyes darkened, and I could see the tension building in him. "You think this is over?" he spat. "You think you've exposed us? You've only just begun to see what's coming. This isn't a game you can win." I didn't back down. "You don't get to dictate the outcome anymore. I've already won." The press conference erupted into chaos, but I didn't pay attention. I had already said what needed to be said. The truth was out. Mason's family was exposed, and now it was time to deal with the consequences. I left the building quickly, but the weight of everything didn't lift. I knew Mason and his family weren't done. They would come for me, harder than before. But I couldn't stop, not now. I had no choice but to keep fighting. That night, as I went through the press clippings and watched the media coverage, I realized how much they had underestimated me. They had thought they could control everything, my life, my future. But they hadn't accounted for the one thing they couldn't control: the truth. The next morning, I woke to a call from Paul. "They've filed a restraining order against you," he said. "They're trying to keep you from speaking out anymore." I could feel the anger rising. "They can try, but they won't succeed. I'm not stopping." We weren't finished yet, not by a long shot. The final battle had begun, and I was ready to take it all the way. I had exposed the truth. Now I just had to make sure they couldn't hide anymore. The next few days blurred together as I fought off wave after wave of retaliation. Mason's family was relentless. The restraining order was just the beginning. They had lawyers on every corner, making sure every move I made was met with a legal challenge. But I wasn't backing down. I had exposed them. Now I had to make sure they couldn't cover it up. The pressure weighed heavily on me, but there was something different in the air now. They were desperate. I could feel it, even as they tried to bury me under a pile of lies. They knew I had them cornered. They just didn't know how far I was willing to go. The phone call came just before midnight. The number was unfamiliar, but something about it felt urgent. "Catherine," a voice said, low and breathless. "It's time." I recognized it instantly. Richard. He had been in the shadows, digging into the final pieces of the puzzle. "What is it?" I asked, my heart pounding. "They've made a mistake," Richard said, his voice tight with intensity. "You've exposed their criminal activity, but there's one more thing, one final piece that will destroy them. You've got to act quickly. If you wait too long, they'll bury everything." My mind raced. "What is it?" "Evidence," Richard replied. "The judge who's been helping them, he's not just involved, he's been paid off. And we have the records to prove it, but we need to get this to the right people before they can cover it up. We can't wait any longer." I didn't need to hear more. "Where are the records?" "I'm sending them now. You need to move fast, Catherine. This is the last shot." I hung up, my fingers trembling as I stared at the phone screen. The final piece of the puzzle. The judge. The one who had been protecting them, turning a blind eye to their corruption. If we could prove that he was on their payroll, everything would fall apart. But we couldn't wait. Time was running out. I immediately called Paul. "Get ready. Richard's sending the records. We need to go public with this as soon as possible. We have no time to waste." Paul's voice was filled with urgency. "I'll prepare everything. But Catherine, once this is out, there's no going back. Are you sure you're ready?" "I'm ready," I replied, the finality in my voice ringing clear. We exposed them all. The next few hours felt like a blur. Richard's records came through, packed with everything we needed to expose the judge's involvement in Mason's family's operations. There were emails, bank transactions, communication logs, all tying the judge directly to their illegal activities. The pieces of the puzzle were finally fitting together. I contacted the reporter who had helped us before. We have the final piece, I said, my voice steady but urgent. This is it. We go live with everything we've uncovered. We're all in, the reporter replied. This story's been picked up by multiple outlets. If we release this now, it's going to explode. I took a deep breath, gathering myself. This was it. There would be no turning back once the story was out. If we exposed the judge, if we revealed the full extent of Mason's family's criminal empire, they would never recover. But I couldn't stop thinking about the consequences. Would they come after me again? Would they try to destroy everything I had worked for? I couldn't afford to hesitate, not now. I nodded to myself and made the call. Do it, release everything. The story went live minutes later. As the details of the judge's involvement, the payments, and the links to Mason's family flooded the news, the world reacted immediately. Headlines exploded. The tide was turning, but so was the storm. By the time the press conference was set for the next morning, I had already begun to feel the weight of the retaliation. I woke up to find more messages, more threats, this time with more intensity. You think you're winning, you'll regret this, we're coming for you. I steeled myself. The enemy was desperate, but that desperation was a sign of weakness. They were losing their grip, and when people start losing control, they'll do anything to regain it. The press conference was scheduled to go live. As I stood in front of the cameras, my hands shook only briefly. I couldn't afford to show fear. I knew what I had to say, and I knew the battle was finally coming to a head. I'm here today to expose the truth, I began, my voice unwavering. For too long, Mason's family has operated behind a veil of power and influence. They thought they could control the legal system, manipulate the media, and hide their criminal activities. But today, that ends. I laid out everything. The bribes, the hidden accounts, the corrupt judge, and most importantly, the lengths they had gone to in order to silence me. The cameras flashed, the reporters murmured. I could see the shift happening, could feel the power dynamic changing in the room. They had tried to bury me, but now the truth was undeniable. Just as I thought we were winning, the phone rang again. It was from an unknown number. I answered, "What now?" "This isn't over," Mason's voice came through, more controlled than before. "You've exposed some things, but there's still a lot more you don't know. You have no idea who's behind this." I held my ground. "I know enough. I've exposed you for what you are." "You think you've won?" he replied, his tone colder now. "We have more than you can imagine. This isn't just about family. This is about something much bigger. You've just made a powerful enemy. You'll wish you hadn't." Before I could respond, the line went dead. The final confrontation was upon me. This wasn't just about Mason's family. It was about a web of corruption that stretched far deeper than I had ever imagined. The danger had grown beyond anything I could have predicted. But now there was no turning back. This fight was personal, and it wasn't just for custody. It was for everything. The line went dead. Silence filled the room, and the weight of Mason's final words settled heavily on me. "You'll wish you hadn't." The warning rang in my ears, and it felt like they were stepping up their game, playing with a level of ruthlessness I hadn't yet encountered. I knew they weren't finished. I had exposed them, but they wouldn't stop until they had done everything they could to bury me. They had their power, their influence. But now, it was about more than just revenge, it was about survival. I looked at the reporters waiting for the next question, knowing the storm was just beginning. The story had gone global, and the attention was already shifting toward Mason's family and their empire of corruption. But as the questions started flooding in, I couldn't ignore the feeling in the pit of my stomach, the sense that something was coming. The press conference ended, but the pressure didn't. I went straight home, knowing I had to keep moving. I couldn't let myself be complacent now. They were coming after me, and I had to stay one step ahead. The first call came a few hours later. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Catherine, Richard's voice crackled over the line. You're in more danger than you realize. I clenched my jaw. What now? They're making moves, big ones. They've started pulling strings you don't know about. People are being paid off to silence the story. They'll stop at nothing to protect their empire. We're not just talking about Mason's family anymore. You've angered people who have a lot more power than you think. I stood up, pacing the room. What do we do? We expose them all, Richard said, his voice low. We push harder now that they're reacting. We need more leverage. They can't cover everything. I'm not stopping. I've already put everything on the line, I replied. Send me everything you've got. We need to tear it down before they can rebuild. Richard didn't hesitate. I'm sending everything. But Catherine, be careful. They're coming after you. And I don't just mean Mason's family. This is bigger than them. I ended the call, the weight of Richard's words sinking in. Whoever was behind this, whoever was backing Mason's family, wasn't playing by the same rules. They would do whatever it took to destroy me. I had to be prepared for anything. I sat down, going through the files I had, piecing together the final pieces of the puzzle. Every moment felt like it was slipping away. If I didn't act quickly, everything could fall apart. That's when the doorbell rang, a sharp knock. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly, I stood up and walked to the door, peering through the peephole. No one. I opened it. Standing there was a man in a black suit, his face cold and impassive. I didn't recognize him, but the unease in my gut told me everything I needed to know. Catherine, the man said, his voice clipped, you've made some powerful enemies. It's not too late to stop. The words hit me like a punch. Who are you? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you back off. This fight isn't yours anymore. It's bigger than you. I stood my ground. I'm not backing down. You can't intimidate me. The man didn't move, his eyes cold. You've crossed a line you don't understand. You think you're in control, but you're not. People will come after you, Catherine, and when they do, you'll regret it. Before I could respond, he turned and walked away without another word, disappearing into the shadows of the street. I slammed the door shut, my mind racing. They weren't just trying to intimidate me anymore, they were warning me. And the message was clear: back down or face the consequences. But I wasn't backing down. They had underestimated me from the start. Now it was time to make sure they regretted it. I grabbed my phone and called Paul. They're getting more aggressive. A man just showed up at my door, telling me to stop or face the consequences. Paul's voice turned hard. We knew this would happen. They're trying to scare you, don't let them. I'm done being scared, I snapped. I've come this far and I'm not going to let them win. Paul took a deep breath. We need to expose them completely. It's time to go all in. If we release everything now, if we make sure the public knows who they're really up against, we can't lose. I didn't hesitate. Get everything to the press, now. The next few hours felt like a blur. I was too deep in the fight to think about anything else. Richard sent me the final piece of the puzzle, a direct link between Mason's family and a secret offshore account, one they had used to fund political campaigns, cover up illegal activities, and bribe officials. The document was explosive. If it hit the media, it would bring everything crashing down. I called the reporter. It's time, release everything, I don't care what it takes, this ends now. The moment the story hit, I knew there would be no turning back. I sat down, staring at the screen as the news broke. The public response was immediate. Mason's family's empire of corruption was laid bare for everyone to see. They couldn't hide anymore, but I knew they wouldn't take it lying down. I was preparing for the worst when the phone rang. It was Mason. You've made your move, his voice seethed, barely contained. But you don't understand what you're up against. You think exposing us will make you a hero. You're about to find out what happens when you cross the wrong people. I leaned forward, my hand clenched around the phone. It's too late for threats, Mason. You're exposed. There's nothing you can do now. We'll see about that, he hissed before hanging up. I stood, feeling the weight of the danger closing in. They weren't finished. This wasn't over. But the truth was out, and I wasn't going to let them destroy me. The final confrontation was coming. And I was ready to face it head-on. The moment Mason hung up, I knew everything had changed. There would be no going back. He had finally lost control, and now it was a matter of time before they retaliated. I could feel the storm building. But now, I had the upper hand, and I wasn't going to let it slip. I immediately called Paul, my heart pounding with anticipation. They're coming for us. They know they're cornered, and they're not going to let this go. Paul's voice was calm, but I could hear the tension in it. We need to keep the pressure on. The media is all over this, but we can't stop. We have to make sure every piece of evidence gets out. They'll try to suppress it. Then we give them more, I said, my voice sharp. Expose everything. We need to hit them harder than ever. I wasn't just talking about the corruption anymore. We needed to go deeper, expose the people behind the people, the ones who had been pulling the strings. Mason's family wasn't just a threat anymore, they were part of a much larger network of corruption, and I was going to bring it all down. As the day passed, I waited. The media was buzzing with the new developments, but there was something else in the air, something darker. The retaliation was coming. I could feel it. And then it happened. A knock at my door. I didn't even need to look through the peephole. I knew who it was. I opened the door, and there he stood, Timothy. His face was pale, his eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, panic, maybe even regret. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cold. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "I came to warn you," he said, his voice low. "You don't know what you're doing. This is bigger than just us. It's not over. You've exposed too much." I didn't move, didn't flinch. "You're too late, Timothy. The truth is already out. You can't stop it." His eyes flickered, and for the first time I saw doubt. "They're going to come after you. They'll stop at nothing. You think you've won? This is just the beginning. You're making yourself a target. And when they come for you, they'll have no mercy." I stepped closer, the finality in my voice clear. "I'm not afraid anymore. You've shown me who you are, Timothy, who you all are, and I won't back down." He took a deep breath, as if weighing something in his mind. "Catherine, you don't get it. There's more at play here. You've stirred up a hornet's nest. And now—" His words trailed off as he turned and walked out the door without another word. I stood there, feeling the gravity of the moment. He hadn't come to warn me for nothing. They were getting desperate. I picked up my phone and called Paul. "They're coming for me, Paul, Timothy. He just warned me. It's not over. They're going to do whatever it takes to stop me." Paul was silent for a moment, and then he spoke, his voice steady but urgent. "You're right. They won't stop until they've destroyed you. You need to stay on the offensive, don't let up." "I'm not backing down," I said firmly. "We're going to finish this." I spent the next few hours going over every detail of the case, the evidence, everything that had been exposed. The truth was out, but I knew they were going to fight back harder than ever. The question wasn't whether I had the truth on my side, it was whether I could survive the fallout. And then, just as the weight of it all started to settle in, the phone rang again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize, but something in my gut told me it was important. "Catherine," came the voice on the other end. It was Richard, but his voice was filled with panic. "You need to listen to me, now." I felt the panic rise in my chest. "What is it? What's happening?" "They're moving faster than we thought. The connections, there's something bigger. People are getting involved that we didn't expect. You've exposed the judge, but there's someone else behind all of this, someone much more dangerous. They're pulling strings in the shadows, and they won't stop until you're finished." I felt my blood run cold. "Who?" "I don't know yet," Richard said, his voice strained. "But I'm getting closer. You need to prepare yourself. They're not just trying to shut you down, they're trying to erase you completely." I froze, the magnitude of his words sinking in. What do I do? "We fight back, but we have to be careful. We can't let them know we're onto them. I'll send you everything I've uncovered, but you need to act fast. Time's running out." I hung up, my heart pounding. It wasn't just Mason's family anymore. Someone else was pulling the strings, someone far more dangerous than I had imagined, and they were coming for me. The night fell, and the tension in the air thickened. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but every step I took, every move I made felt like a gamble. I had exposed them. Now I had to survive them. I sat at my desk, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The evidence was all there, but the people I was up against weren't just going to back off. They were too powerful, too connected. The storm was coming, and there was nothing left to do but face it head-on. You have reached the end of the text.